My name is George Valesco. I'm going to be leading this webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about call-in pay in New York State. And with us today, we are joined by Alfonso David, Deputy Secretary and Counsel for Civil Rights, who will make a brief introduction.
Good morning. The administration is focused on making sure that employees are aware of their call-in pay rights, and also we want to ensure that employers are aware of what their obligations and rights are under current labor law. We're going to go through in a fairly methodical fashion and walk through the overview of what a call-in pay is, talk about how it applies to the hospitality industry, also talk about how it applies to the miscellaneous industry, provide some examples, and then potentially take some questions and provide answers. This issue became a large issue a few weeks ago when we learned that some employers are potentially not aware of their obligations under labor law, and we also heard some concerns from employees that they were not aware of, employers were not aware of their obligations, and in fact, they were not being paid full wages that were due under existing call-in pay requirements. So as a result, the Governor's Office and the Department of Labor is offering a series of training webinars for the benefit of employers and employees to provide training specifically aimed at those employees, providing them information so that they can exercise their rights, but also providing up-to-date information for store-level managers throughout New York State so that they're aware of their obligations as well. So I'll turn it back over to you to walk through the webinar.
All right, thank you so much, Alfonso. Again, my name is George Valesco, and today's webinar will be relatively brief. We'll go about an hour maybe. I do ask during today's presentation that you mute your phones during the presentation itself. We will be holding questions until the end. However, you can ask your question at any point by using the chat feature. You can access the chat feature by moving your mouse cursor to the top of the screen. When your mouse cursor is touching the top of the screen, a bar will appear, a toolbar, and you'll see that one of the icons on that toolbar at the top of the screen says chat. Click on that chat button, a chat window will appear, and you can type your question. We will answer the questions in the order that they're received at the end of the presentation. So the moment you get that question, please put it in there so you don't forget. As for muting your lines, if your phone has a mute feature, you can use that. Otherwise, there is an internal muting feature. If you use the star key on your phone's touchpad, that'll bring up a menu where you can mute as well. We ask you to mute simply because we have potentially a lot of people on today's call, and there can be background noise from other employees, your coworkers, papers rustling, et cetera, and it would be best to have a nice, clean audio for this presentation. Okay, as Alfonso said, we're going to start with a general overview of the regulation, and then we're going to dig deeper into looking at the hospitality industry, which covers restaurants and hotels, as well as miscellaneous industries, which may include retail and construction, among others. We will demonstrate both industries with examples specific to their regulations, and at the very end, we'll do some questions and answers based on the chat that you type during the presentation. Okay. Call-in pay is wages owed to employees for reporting to work on a given day, or if they are sent home early before the shift is over. Call-in pay may also be called show-up pay, as it entitles employees to a minimum amount of wages for showing up to work a scheduled shift. Call-in pay requires that employees be paid specific minimum number of hours for showing up at the work site. The specific number of hours owed depends on what the industry the employee works in and what his or her regularly scheduled shift is. Call-in pay is always paid at the minimum wage rate, which at the time of this presentation is $8 an hour. If an employee works more than the set minimum number of hours, then call-in pay is not owed. Employees who are notified prior to their arrival on the work site are not entitled to call-in pay. Employees who voluntarily leave work early are not entitled to any call-in pay, any additional amount for their call-in pay, so long as the employer or employer's agent does not improperly influence or pressure that employee to leave work. The term regularly scheduled shift requires regularity and excludes special staff meetings and other infrequently occurring events which require the employee to report for work at a time that is different than in a normal workday. Accordingly, in determination with whether the meeting is part of a regularly scheduled shift, the Department of Labor looks at the following factors: the frequency of the meeting's occurrence, the regularity of the meeting's occurrence, the employee's ability to anticipate the meeting's occurrence, and whether the employees in attendance would consider the meeting outside of their regularly scheduled work hours. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. An employee who goes home at the beginning of his shift for personal reasons, such as the lack of childcare, is not entitled to call-in pay. Another example, an employee who is sent home early due to lack of work may be entitled to call-in pay. Again, it depends on all the factors that were just described. Employees who are told that they may voluntarily leave, but if they do not leave, they will not be considered for a future promotion, may be entitled to call-in pay, as the employer is unduly pressuring them to leave work. A 1-hour meeting that occurs once a month on different days does not constitute a regularly scheduled shift, and employees may be entitled to call-in pay for that meeting. These are some examples illustrating the overall procedures. Now we will look specifically at the regulations for the individual industries, starting with the hospitality industry, which again covers hotels and restaurants. Hospitality industry call-in pay depends on how many shifts are scheduled for the day. Call-in pay must be paid for 3 hours for one shift. Call-in pay must be paid for 6 hours for 2 shifts, totaling 6 hours or less. Call-in pay must be paid for 8 hours for 3 shifts, totaling 8 hours or less. Call-in pay must be paid to all employees for the actual hours worked at the employee's regular or overtime rate, minus the tip credit if tipped. The balance of the remaining call-in pay period is paid at minimum wage with no tip credit. Call-in pay cannot be offset by credits or meals or lodging by an employer, or call-in pay specifically for the hospitality industry cannot be offset by the amounts paid in excess of the minimum wage or overtime rate. Let's illustrate these points with some examples. An employee who reports to work for a single 8-hour shift, but is sent home after only 1 hour of work, must be paid at their regular rate of pay for that 1 hour actually worked, and at the minimum wage rate of $8 per hour for the 2 additional call-in pay hours. for a total of 3 hours. Remember, call and pay 3 hours for the hospitality industry. An employee who is sent home upon reporting to work must be paid at the minimum wage rate of $8 per hour for the full 3 call-in pay hours. An employee who is told by his supervisor before he arrives to the work site to work a scheduled shift that he is not needed is not entitled to call-in pay because they were given notice. Okay, we'll next take a look at some examples for the miscellaneous industries, and we'll give you an overview of miscellaneous industries procedures. Miscellaneous industries include retail, construction, among others. Call-in pay must be paid for 4 hours for one shift, or the number of hours in that employee's regularly scheduled shift, if less, at the minimum wage rate of $8 per call-in hour. If an employee earns more than the minimum wage, for miscellaneous industries only, the employer can offset the call-in pay owed by the amounts paid over and above the minimum wage requirements for that work week. Each instance that an employee is sent home from the work site during the work week must be counted. Okay, that might be a lot to take in, but we'll illustrate this clearly over a few examples in just a moment. A minimum wage earning employee who reports to work for a single 8-hour shift but is sent home after only 1 hour of work must be paid at the minimum wage rate of $8 per hour for the 3 remaining call-in pay hours. An employee earning $10 per hour who is scheduled to work 40 hours in a week reports to work for the final 8-hour shift of the week, but is sent home after only 1 hour of work. She is not entitled to call-in pay, as the employee will be paid $66 in excess of the state minimum wage for that week because she worked a total of 33 hours, and a credit can be taken for that amount against the total $24 that would be owed for the 3 call-in pay hours. Remember, she is earning more than minimum wage, more than $8 an hour. An employee earning $10 per hour who works 10 hours in a week and reports to work for an additional 4-hour shift, but is sent home after only 1 hour of work, totaling of 11 total hours worked. They're eligible for $2 of call-in pay because the minimum wage plus call-in pay is $112, which is equal to 14 hours at $8 an hour. As the employee would earn $110 at her regular rate of pay, 11 total hours worked times $10 an hour, the difference is an additional $2 owed as call-in pay. Okay, this last example will show overtime. An employee earning $8.25 an hour, 25 cents over minimum wage, has worked a 40-hour week and reports to work for another single 8-hour shift, which is 40 hours times $8.25 an hour, $330 so far. Of that overtime, they work 2 hours before being sent home. 2 hours times time and a half, $12.37.5 per hour, is $24.75 in overtime pay. Because they are sent home after 2 hours and can potentially earn 4 hours of call-in pay, the 2 hours times the minimum wage of $8 an hour gives us $16 in credit. But let's take a look at what they earned beyond minimum wage. 40 hours times 25 cents is $10. So they are entitled to $6 of call-in pay because the 16 minus 10 gives us 6. Let's add it all up. Total wages due, regular hours worked, 330, plus overtime hours worked, $24.75, plus the actual call-in pay credit of $6 gives us total wages of $360.75. Okay, for answers to any of your questions regarding call-in pay, please contact the New York State Department of Labor, Division of Labor Standards, by calling 1-888-52-LABOR or email lsask@labor.ny.gov. Thank you for your attention, and this is the end of the webinar. Have a great day.